You've been taught your whole life that strength means saving others, that greatness means sacrifice, that the truly admirable person is the one who puts everyone else first. You've watched movies where the hero throws themselves into danger to rescue strangers, read stories where the noble character gives up everything for the collective good, absorbed the message over and over, that your worth is measured by how much of yourself you're willing to destroy for other people's benefit. And you've tried to live this way, haven't you? You've said yes when you meant no, sacrificed your time and energy for people who would never do the same for you, twisted yourself into shapes that don't fit you just to avoid disappointing someone else. And you call this being good, being strong, being heroic. But here's what nobody tells you. You're dying inside. Every time you put someone else's needs before your own legitimate needs, every time you silence your authentic desires to fulfill expectations, every time you drain yourself empty, trying to be everyone's savior, a part of you withers and dies. You wake up exhausted before the day begins, because you're carrying everyone else's burdens on top of your own. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back because you've spent so long being what others need that you've forgotten who you actually are. You feel resentful, depleted, bitter, and then you feel guilty for feeling those things because good people aren't supposed to feel resentful about helping others. Good people aren't supposed to get tired of sacrifice. Good people are supposed to find joy in selflessness. And the worst part is that everyone around you reinforces this destruction. They call you selfless when you ignore your own needs. They praise your generosity when you give beyond your capacity. They admire your willingness to help, even as they watch you collapse under the weight of it. Nobody sees that what they're calling virtue is actually slow suicide. Nobody acknowledges that you're not growing stronger through sacrifice. You're growing weaker, more fragile, more depleted. You're not becoming heroic. You're becoming a shell, a hollow performance of goodness with nothing authentic left inside. You're not wrong to feel this way, and you're not alone. Thousands of people right now are experiencing exactly this same exhaustion from trying to be the hero, from attempting to live up to impossible standards of selflessness, from destroying themselves in the name of virtue. What you're experiencing was identified with brutal clarity by Friedrich Nietzsche, who spent his entire life dismantling the lie that strength means self-sacrifice. He understood that what culture calls heroism is often just another word for self-destruction dressed up in moral language. What almost nobody knows is that Nietzsche's concept of the Overman, often mistranslated as Superman, has been catastrophically misunderstood. People think he was describing some kind of superhero, some impossibly noble figure who transcends human weakness through moral perfection. But Nietzsche was describing something completely different, something far more disturbing and far more true. He was describing a survivor, someone who has learned to protect their own life force instead of bleeding it out for others. Someone who has developed the capacity to say no without guilt. Someone who understands that real strength isn't martyrdom, but the fierce preservation of your authentic self in a world that demands you destroy it. Today I'm going to reveal exactly what Nietzsche meant by the Overman, why this concept has nothing to do with heroism and everything to do with survival, and most importantly, why your inability to be the selfless hero everyone expects is actually the first sign that you're ready to become something real. By the end of this video, you'll understand that the exhaustion you feel from trying to save everyone is your authentic self screaming that you need to save yourself first. But I need you to know what I'm about to share will challenge everything you've been taught about goodness and strength. Nietzsche's most misunderstood concept wasn't the will to power or God is dead. It was his vision of the Overman, the human being who has moved beyond conventional morality into something unprecedented. The catastrophic misunderstanding is that people hear Superman and think superhero. Someone with extraordinary powers who uses those powers to help others, to fight evil, to sacrifice themselves for the collective good. But Nietzsche meant something almost opposite. The Overman isn't someone who saves others. The Overman is someone who has saved themselves from the psychological and spiritual destruction that conventional morality demands. Consider what Nietzsche observed about the morality that dominated his culture and still dominates ours. It's a morality that elevates suffering, that treats self-sacrifice as the highest virtue, that measures your worth by how much of yourself you're willing to destroy for others. This morality teaches that your desires are suspect, that your needs are selfish, that caring for yourself is vanity while caring for others is virtue. And Nietzsche noticed something that nobody wanted to acknowledge. This morality doesn't create strong people. It creates resentful, depleted, bitter people who are slowly dying while calling their death virtue. In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche traced how this morality of self-sacrifice emerged. It wasn't created by the strong, it was created by the weak as a weapon against the strong. People who lacked power to live fully, to create, to express themselves authentically, they created a moral system that made powerlessness into virtue. They couldn't be strong, so they made weakness holy. They couldn't live fully, so they made life denial righteous. They couldn't create, so they made service to others the highest good. And they did this not out of genuine compassion, but out of resentment, out of the desire to drag everyone down to their level by making strength itself immoral. But here's what makes this observation devastating. You've internalized this morality so deeply that you can't distinguish between genuine care for others and the self-destructive compulsion to sacrifice yourself. You think that every time you feel the urge to say no, to protect your energy, to prioritize your own needs, that's selfishness speaking. You think that the exhaustion you feel from constant giving is just what goodness costs. You think that if you stop destroying yourself for others, you'll become a bad person. Nietzsche understood that this is exactly how slave morality maintains itself. It makes self-preservation feel like sin. Think about the last time you said yes. When every fiber of your being wanted to say no, someone asked for your time, your energy, your resources, and you could feel that giving it would drain you, would cost you something you couldn't afford to lose. But you said yes anyway, because saying no would make you selfish, would disappoint them, would prove you're not as good as you pretend to be. And then you gave what you promised, and it did drain you exactly as you knew it would. And you felt resentful, depleted, angry, but you couldn't express that anger because you chose to help. So the anger had nowhere to go except inward, poisoning you. Now understand what Nietzsche saw in this pattern. You're not being virtuous. You're being self-destructive. You're not strong enough to protect your own life force, so you let others drain it, and you call that drain generosity. You're not heroic. You're unable to survive with your authentic self intact. So you offer pieces of yourself to others, hoping that your sacrifice will earn you the worth you can't generate internally. This isn't morality. This is slow suicide dressed up in the language of virtue. Nietzsche identified 3 types of people in relation to this morality of self-sacrifice. Understanding which type you are will determine whether you continue dying in the name of goodness or start living in the name of authentic strength. Type 1 is what Nietzsche called the slave. Though it applies to anyone who has fully internalized the morality of self-destruction, the slave genuinely believes that their worth comes from serving others, that their value is measured by how much they sacrifice, that the good life means making yourself small so others can be big. The slave doesn't experience the resentment yet because they've successfully convinced themselves that self-denial is noble. They find identity in being needed, purpose in being useful, validation in being selfless, and they look at anyone who prioritizes themselves as morally inferior, as selfish, as failing at the basic test of human goodness. You recognize slaves everywhere. They're the people who are always available, always helping, always putting others first. They brag about how little they sleep, how much they give, how many people depend on them. They make their exhaustion into virtue, their depletion into nobility, and they judge anyone who sets boundaries, who says no, who protects their own energy. The slave needs you to sacrifice yourself too, because your self-preservation is an implicit accusation that their self-destruction isn't actually necessary. Nietzsche understood that slaves are dangerous, not despite their goodness, but because of it. They will, with genuine love and concern, convince you to destroy yourself just as they've destroyed themselves. Type 2 is what Nietzsche called the resentful one, the person who has sacrificed themselves for others but has begun to feel the cost, has started to experience the resentment and depletion but can't acknowledge it directly. This is probably where you are right now. You've been the good person, the helpful one, the selfless one. You've said yes when you meant no, given when you had nothing left to give, sacrificed your needs for others' wants. And it's killing you. You feel exhausted, bitter, angry, but you can't express this anger directly because you chose to help. You volunteered to sacrifice. So who can you blame except yourself? The resentful one lives in a terrible contradiction. They're still invested in seeing themselves as good, as selfless, as virtuous. But they're increasingly aware that their goodness is destroying them. So the resentment leaks out sideways. They help, but with subtle hostility. They give, but keep score. They sacrifice, but make sure everyone knows how much they're sacrificing. They can't stop being the hero because their entire identity is built on it. but they're dying inside from the effort. And they're starting to hate the people they help, starting to resent the very people whose approval they're destroying themselves to earn. Here's what makes the resentful one's position so painful. They're aware enough to feel the destruction, but not aware enough to stop it. They know something is wrong, but they blame themselves for feeling resentful rather than questioning whether the morality demanding their sacrifice is actually moral. They think the problem is that they're not selfless enough, not strong enough, not good enough, so they try harder, sacrifice more, and the resentment grows until it poisons everything. Nietzsche saw that most people live and die in this state, trapped between the morality they believe and the authentic self that's screaming for preservation. Type 3 is what Nietzsche called the overman, though he's better understood as a survivor. The survivor has seen through the morality of self-sacrifice and has made a fundamental break with it. They've recognized that strength doesn't mean destroying yourself for others. It means protecting your life force so fiercely that you have something authentic to offer the world. They've understood that saying no isn't selfishness. It's the basic requirement of having a self to be. They've accepted that disappointing others is sometimes necessary for not disappearing entirely. But here's what's critical. The survivor isn't selfish in the conventional sense. They haven't become narcissistic or what they've become is boundaried, selective, protective of their authentic energy. They help when helping comes from overflow rather than depletion. They give when giving doesn't require self-betrayal. They care for others from a foundation of caring for themselves rather than instead of caring for themselves. The survivor has learned something that the slave and the resentful one never learned. You cannot actually help anyone if you're destroying yourself in the process. Depleted people don't create value. They just spread their depletion. If you're experiencing exhaustion from trying to be everyone's hero, if you recognize yourself as someone who's sacrificing themselves into resentment and bitterness, you need to understand the specific traps that will keep you locked in self-destructive heroism. These aren't external obstacles. They're sophisticated psychological mechanisms that will convince you that survival is selfishness. Danger 1. The addiction to being needed. You're exhausted from helping everyone, but there's also something you're getting from it. When people need you, when they depend on you, when they can't function without you, you feel important, you feel valuable, you feel like you matter, and this feeling has become addictive. The thought of setting boundaries, of saying no, of letting people solve their own problems, it doesn't just feel selfish. It feels like losing your purpose, your identity, your proof that you deserve to exist. Nietzsche understood that many people prefer the familiar pain of self-sacrifice to the terrifying freedom of not being needed. Because being needed at least gives you a role to play, a reason to wake up, evidence that you matter. Danger 2. Confusing boundaries with cruelty. You've been taught that good people are always available, always generous, always willing to help. So when you consider setting a boundary, when you think about saying no, when you imagine protecting your own energy, it feels violent, it feels mean, it feels like you're becoming the kind of person you've always despised. But Nietzsche saw that this is exactly how slave morality maintains itself. It makes self-preservation feel like violence, makes boundaries feel like cruelty, makes protecting yourself feel like attacking others. The truth is that boundaries aren't cruel. They're honest. Saying no when you mean no isn't violence. It's integrity. Protecting your energy isn't selfishness. It's the basic requirement of having anything authentic to offer. Danger 3. The hope that your sacrifice will eventually be recognized and reciprocated. Part of you keeps giving, keeps sacrificing, keeps destroying yourself because you believe that eventually people will see how much you've given, will appreciate your sacrifice, will start giving back to you with the same intensity you've given to them. You're keeping a ledger even if you won't admit it. You're tracking what you've sacrificed and waiting for the universe or specific people to balance the scales. But Nietzsche understood that this hope is poison because people who take from self-destructive givers rarely become givers themselves. They just find new people to take from when you finally collapse. Your sacrifice doesn't inspire reciprocity. It trains people to expect endless giving while offering nothing in return. Danger 4. Believing that choosing yourself means abandoning others. You think the choice is binary. Either destroy yourself for others and be good, or protect yourself and become selfish. But Nietzsche saw that this is a false choice created by slave morality. The real choice is between depleted giving that eventually turns to resentment and poison, or boundaried giving that comes from genuine overflow and creates actual value. When you protect your energy, when you say no to what depletes you, when you prioritize your authentic needs, you don't become useless to others. You become actually useful to others because you're giving from strength rather than weakness, from choice rather than compulsion, from overflow rather than depletion. So how does transformation from self-destructive hero to authentic survivor actually occur? How do you move from the morality that's killing you into the fierce self-preservation that Nietzsche understood as real strength? This isn't a gentle process. It requires what he called the transvaluation of values, which means you must psychologically destroy your relationship to conventional morality in order to build something authentic. The first phase is recognizing the resentment. You've been performing selflessness while dying inside, and the first step is acknowledging what you actually feel. You're angry at the people you've helped, you're bitter about the sacrifices you've made, you're exhausted from giving what you don't have. And instead of pushing these feelings down, instead of calling them evidence of your moral failure, you acknowledge them as information. Your resentment is telling you that you've been violating your own boundaries, betraying your own needs, destroying yourself in the name of virtue. The resentment isn't the problem. The self-destruction that created the resentment is the problem. The second phase is understanding the origin of your self-sacrifice. You didn't just randomly decide to destroy yourself for others. You learned that your worth depends on it. Somewhere in your history, you internalized the message that you're only valuable when you're useful, only lovable when you're serving, only deserving of existence when you're sacrificing. Maybe it was family dynamics where love was conditional on performance. Maybe it was religious teaching that elevated suffering and martyrdom. Maybe it was cultural messaging about what good people do. But whatever the source, you absorb the belief that you don't have inherent worth, that you must earn your right to exist through endless giving. And this belief is what's killing you. Nietzsche would say you must trace this belief to its root and recognize it for what it is. Slave morality, a psychological virus that was installed in you before you were conscious enough to resist it. You didn't choose this morality, it chose you, infected you, convinced you that your value comes from your usefulness rather than from your authentic existence. And the moment you see this clearly, the moment you recognize that you've been operating from infected programming, you can begin to reject it. The third phase is practicing the smallest possible no. You don't transform from self-destructive hero to survivor overnight. You start with the tiniest boundary, the smallest refusal. Someone asks for something, and instead of automatically saying yes, you pause, you check in with yourself. Does this request align with my authentic capacity and desire right now? Or am I about to say yes out of guilt and fear? And if it's guilt and fear, you practice saying no, not with elaborate justification, not with apology, just no, I can't do that. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. And then you survive the discomfort that follows. Because here's what Nietzsche understood. Saying no will create discomfort. People who are used to your automatic yes will be confused, maybe hurt, possibly angry. They'll accuse you of changing, of becoming selfish, of not being who you used to be. And they're right. You're not who you used to be. You're becoming someone who can survive with your authentic self intact instead of someone who destroys themselves for others' comfort. And their discomfort with your boundaries is information about them, not about you. People who respect you will adjust to your boundaries. People who only valued your depletion will leave. And that loss, as painful as it might be, is necessary. The fourth phase is redirecting your energy toward your own life. All that time and energy and resources you've been pouring into others, into their problems and needs and wants, you start redirecting it toward yourself, toward your growth, your creations, your authentic desires. This feels incredibly selfish at first. You've been taught that spending energy on yourself is vanity while spending it on others is virtue. But Nietzsche understood that this is exactly backwards. When you develop yourself, when you cultivate your capacities, when you create from your authentic nature, you generate actual value in the world. When you deplete yourself serving others, you generate nothing except your own resentment and eventual collapse. The survivor understands that the greatest gift you can offer the world isn't your sacrifice. It's your fully developed authentic self. It's what you create when you protect your energy fiercely enough to actually create instead of just maintaining. It's the contribution that only you can make when you're not exhausted from trying to be everything to everyone. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Not power over others, but the power to become fully yourself, to express your authentic nature, to create from your specific genius. The fifth phase is embracing what Nietzsche called amore fati, love of fate, which in this context means loving your survival more than you love others' approval. You accept that some people will call you selfish for having boundaries. You accept that some relationships will end when you stop destroying yourself. You accept that choosing your authentic life over endless service will disappoint people who benefited from your self-destruct, and you make that choice anyway. Not because you don't care about others, but because you've finally learned to care about yourself with the same intensity you've been caring about others. Remember that exhaustion you feel from trying to be everyone's hero? It's not virtue and it's not strength. It's slow death dressed up in moral language. You're not growing stronger through sacrifice. You're growing weaker, more depleted, more bitter. You're not becoming heroic. You're becoming a shell, performing goodness while dying inside. And every person who praises your selflessness, who benefits from your endless giving, who encourages you to keep sacrificing, they're not helping you. They're participating in your destruction. Nietzsche's Overman isn't the person who saves everyone else. It's the person who has learned to save themselves from the psychological and spiritual destruction that conventional morality demands. It's the survivor who has protected their life force fiercely enough to have something authentic to offer the world. It's the individual who has stopped performing heroism and started living with integrity, which means saying no when you mean no, protecting your energy without guilt, choosing your authentic life over endless service to others' expectations. You're not a bad person for being tired of sacrifice. You're a person who's finally ready to survive. You're not selfish for wanting to protect your energy. You're finally developing the strength that conventional morality lacks, the strength to disappoint others in order to not disappoint yourself. You're not abandoning your capacity for care and generosity. You're transforming it from compulsive self-destruction into conscious choice, from depleted giving that breeds resentment into overflowing contribution that comes from strength. Every person you admire who seems genuinely powerful, genuinely creative, genuinely alive, they're not endlessly sacrificing themselves for others. They're fiercely protecting their authentic energy so they have something real to express. They've learned what the Overman knows, that real strength isn't martyrdom. It's survival with your authentic self intact. They say no without guilt. They set boundaries without apology. They prioritize their growth and creation without needing permission. And because they're not depleted, because they're actually caring for themselves, they have genuine capacity to contribute from overflow rather than obligation. I know what I just described might have shaken something loose in you, something you've been avoiding for years. Stop for a second and ask yourself honestly, have you been destroying yourself in the name of heroism? Have you been sacrificing your authentic life for others' expectations? Are you ready to stop being the self-destructive hero and start being the fierce survivor? If this resonates, comment. I choose survival over sacrifice. Your words will reach someone else right now who's collapsing under the weight of endless giving, who believes their exhaustion is virtue, who desperately needs permission to finally protect themselves. Subscribe to the channel for insights that challenge everything you've been taught about strength and morality. Every week I bring you Nietzsche's most demanding truths about what it actually means to be powerful, to be good, to be strong in ways that don't require your destruction. This isn't comfortable philosophy. This is fuel for people ready to stop performing heroism and start living with fierce integrity. If you're ready to understand how to build authentic strength instead of self-destructive sacrifice, check out my video on Nietzsche's Will to Power, where I reveal exactly how to channel your energy toward your own development instead of endless depletion. The path from exhausted hero to authentic survivor starts with a single boundary, a single no, a single choice to protect yourself with the same intensity you've been protecting everyone else. Nietzsche's Overman is not a hero, he's a survivor. And the day you understand this, the day you stop trying to save everyone else and start fiercely protecting your own life force, you'll discover a form of strength that the self-destructive hero will never know. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.